The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. Bringing you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
Storms hit the state of Oklahoma on Tuesday afternoon, but none bigger than the injury to quarterback John Mateer.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners.
Soonersports.com breaking the big story of the day that John Mateer will be out for some time. We don't know exactly how much time. Apparently he was injured against Auburn on a throw down the field sometime in the first quarter, it sounded like. Hurt his thumb bad enough that he's going to need surgery on Wednesday, and it will keep him out at least through the Kent State game, but likely beyond that.
Yeah, it sucks. As you can see, I'm traveling, and while I'm actually traveling, jumping from plane to plane and place to place, we get news that John Mateer is going to be down with thumb surgery. And so, yeah, the play in question, I actually have a picture of it here, is when he was throwing it here and Falk hit Falk's arm as he was trying to deflect the pass. It was a deep pass to Isaiah Satania. And in that play, of course, he overthrew him, but John was hurt. Now, this was early in the game. If I'm correct, this is like first quarter stuff. So John was that tough that he played the entire game like that. And I'm assuming that's why he was a little off on some of the play throws throughout the first half. But this was the crazy thing to me, John. He closed out the game going 16 for 17 on his completions, especially on that ending, going like a perfect on that final drive to win the game. So, yeah, that injury obviously is going to be bothersome for him long term, but he was able to fight through it for the team and get the win. And that tells me that even though the timetable that's been given, like I've seen 5 different timetables, but I'm going to give you the 2 that to me feels like the most relevant. I've seen one timetable say he could be be back for the Texas game. I've seen one timetable that said he could be back for the South Carolina game. And I've also seen one that said he'll be back for Ole Miss. So I'm going to give you 3. John, I don't know which one's true. I don't know which one is true, which one's fake. We won't know until the surgery, which is going to be today. He's probably already in LA getting prepped for it, have the surgery with one of the world-renowned top hand surgeons out there. He's done surgery on Steph Curry, Drew Brees. So we'll know Wednesday what the actual timeline is based upon how the surgery goes. But sucks, man. Great way to start your day, right? Great way to go through your day, especially while traveling.
Yeah, so you come out of the Auburn win and then this. Like, it's a gut punch, really it is. And it's
right in the belly button.
You go from having a guy that was leading the Heisman contender race right now to not having him available for anywhere from 3 to 5, 6 weeks, depending on how the surgery goes, how it heals up, how his rehabilitation goes, all of that. I mean, there are a lot of extenuating circumstances that go into this. It's not just a simple, this is the timeline, he's back at this point, blah, blah, blah. I mean, we've seen setbacks with so many players over the years, not just at Oklahoma, everywhere, that you can't really definitively say, yes, he will definitely be back this game. You hope he is. We'll see.
Fingers and toes.
It's fortuitous. The only like bright side I can see out of this is that it happened with a bye week and then Kent State coming after that. So Michael Hawkins Jr. has already been named the starter for Kent State. Mm-hmm. He's going to get the entire bye week of first team reps. He'll get Kent State week, first team reps. And then if John Mateer is not going to be back for Texas week, he'll get all of that week with first team reps as well. So if an injury had to happen, man, this is the time because you've got time to prepare Michael Hawkins Jr. to be your starter.
I mean, how about this, John? How about no injury happens, right?
I mean, obviously, no injury happening. That would be the dream.
No, I'm giving you crap.
But I live in a
More
world
so, but you're right.
The 2024 season existed and injuries happen.
Right, you're right, and you're right. The perfect timing for it would be now, especially with having the full week off. and having Kent State the following week. So that's 2 weeks that, regardless of what the prognosis is after he has the surgery, you can really figure out what's next, right? And like you said, Texas game, Michael Hawkins will most likely be prepping for, if John is up to it, if he's back like in Miracle in 12, 13 days, like some other quarterbacks have come back from thumb surgeries, if it's minor enough, maybe he is back and ready to go. And now the opposition has to prepare for 2 quarterbacks, not one, but 2. And I kind of would like that feeling, John. I would like the opportunity for them to have to prepare for 2. And then we go out there and John says, no, I'm playing in Red River because this is why I came here. I came here to be a part of that game. I'm in my home city, in my home area, right? I'm from the Dallas Metroplex, Little Elm, but I'm from Dallas Metroplex. I want to play in that game. And he goes out there and balls out. But yeah, no, this probably is the best time for us to have him down because, like you said, the timing is probably best. And I think that's probably why they went ahead and did this. Because honestly, I'm actually kind of surprised they didn't talk about him just kind of like toughing it out and playing the rest of the season.
I mean, that's possible, but Brent Venables said it. It's like for his short-term and long-term future, we felt like this was the best decision. And listen, I appreciate Coach wanting to take care of his players. I don't want any varsity blues type situations where you got that coach and, injecting the running back with the torn ACL in his knee, with the steroids and trying to keep him on the field. No, man, we need to got to take care of players. But now with Michael Hawkins Jr. stepping in as the starter, how do you feel about the offense moving forward? Because we haven't had a run game. The offense has looked pretty good in the passing game. You've had a lot of guys having some really strong performances. What's your thoughts on Michael Hawkins Jr. now stepping in?
I think Kent State game will tell us everything we need to know. If we can't figure out and really establish a run game in that game, we're cooked. Period. That's exactly how I feel. But I think Michael Hawkins can go out there and make that happen. He has the dual threat capabilities, just like John Mateer. We've seen it last year. He went on the road and helped win the game against Auburn. So he's been able to contribute and do a lot of stuff as a quarterback. So I'm not concerned about his capabilities. The question is going to be how Ben Arbuckle uses him, because I don't feel like the Temple game's a good measuring stick to how he can play, right? Yeah. I think it's a bad one, right? I agree. I think it's a terrible one because I don't feel like they were really just trying to leverage him. Now, I honestly am asking the question why he even played in that game, but at the same time, it's because I do feel like they're going to try to preserve his red shirt, but I also believe that they were like, we need to get you some reps just in case, because we're going to have to turn to you as the number 2 no matter what. And so if that being the case, I think that he's capable. Like I said, he's done it. I don't think he has the yips. I just need him to go out there and get comfortable, get his feet set, launch it, because he has the arm ability. We've seen him do it. I mean, he chunked that deep ball to J.J. Hester against Auburn, and that was a perfect dime to a dude in stride. Yep. So we know he can do it. He just needs to go out there and do it. And I actually have faith that he can. Kent State's, like I said, is going to tell us everything about his confidence going forward.
I understand why people want to look at last year and try to extrapolate that, hey, this is who Michael Hawkins Jr. is the quarterback we saw against Navy or against South Carolina, that, he turned the ball over on each of the first 3 possessions. But let's just remember the context in which the true freshman quarterback was playing. He was playing with the worst Oklahoma offense that we've seen since 1998. Statistically, that is a fact. So if we're going to judge a quarterback based on that kind of a season in those circumstances, then okay, you can do that. But maybe, just maybe, he's gotten better. Maybe, just maybe, this offense is actually better because you've got Deion Burks and Isaiah Satania and Keontae Lewis, and Giovanni Gibson will be back soon. You've got running backs that are capable, even if you haven't run the ball well. You've got an offensive line that can actually pass protect, which wasn't the case last year, which was part of the reason that the dude turned the ball over on each of the first 3 possessions against South Carolina and didn't look great against Texas and had some moments against Navy where the offense didn't really work. It's because they couldn't protect the quarterback against anybody. They were terrible at pass pro team last year.
Now this line is great at pass pro.
Right. So
great.
I get why you want to equate last year's effectiveness and results to this year because it's the same quarterback, right? But it's not the same team around him. Not even close. It's not the same offensive coordinator situation. Not even close. Ben Arbuckle has taken Cole and pressured it into diamonds at a number of places. Western Kentucky, Washington State, now at Oklahoma. He's going to do the same thing. Remember, John Mateer was not this 5-star quarterback coming out of high school. Bailey Zapp wasn't either. But they produce under Ben Arbuckle, and I expect Michael Hawkins Jr. to do the same.
The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits how I like to bet, whether it's player props in that moment or building a same-game parlay or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays, or in my case, Mondays. Lions got that with the points. Love that for me. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
It is official. The head man, the myth, the mullet, Mike Gundy himself is out.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Whenever you see something like this happen, the timing of it is naturally a little suspect in my personal opinion. But what are your thoughts, right? You're a big fan of the Big 12. You're a big fan of what Oklahoma State has done for the conference. We have a lot of commonality.
Right.
Give us your thoughts here, brother man.
Well, we just went through it, right? We just replaced Neil Brown, obviously not a pillar of the program like Mike Gundy, but I can relate in the Bob Huggins sense of the words, right? Because we just lost Bob Huggins recently. I know what it's like to replace a pillar of the program and have to rebuild from scratch. It's not always pretty.
Right.
It's not always easy. There's always that year zero you like to give somebody, or at least, some semblance of a year zero in this day and age.
Roger.
It's really hard to build from scratch in this day and age. As far as Mike Gundy, is it a stretch to say he's the greatest coach in the history of the Big 12? I think there's a couple names you can toss into that hat, obviously. But I think, what he's done for the program, what he's done for college football, what he's done as a play caller, his coaching tree. Obviously, we had Dana Holgorsen, who was a big part of that staff and had a lot of those values that Mike Gundy, loves, which is basically attack grass, spread people horizontally. That whole play style is something that a lot of people have really shown to like and adapt to so far as even in the NFL right now. So what Mike Gundy has done is ever-reaching. It's going to be everlasting. I think there have been obviously high moments. There have been low moments where, obviously you can look to the Ollie Gordon statements after the DUI, or you can look to the I'm a man, I'm 40 speech, which everybody loves. There's a bunch of things, a bunch of peaks, a bunch of valleys. But I think at the end of the day, when you look at the tenure of Mike Gundy, you can say a couple of things for sure. That's Hall of Fame worthy, and it won't be duplicated.
So, I do think that he is in the upper echelon of the Big 12 coaches, right? The only knock I could personally give to Mike Gundy would be that he doesn't have enough conference titles to be in that upper echelon conversation, to be the number one guy, right? But he is in the upper tier of the greatest coaches in the Big 12. From a wins perspective, up until this last season and a half, he is certainly up there, right? I think you could make the argument that the lack of Big 12 titles and the Bedlam losses are probably the only black eyes on his entire tenure until now, right? And again, when you go back and think that Mike Gundy was the quarterback for the teams that Oklahoma State always looked towards as the shining light, right? 44, 45, 84 through 88. Those were the creme de la creme years of Oklahoma State fandom. Mike Gundy was a part of that, right? And he was an assistant in the Les Miles era where we kind of were rebuilding after the Bob Simmons days. He has been instrumental. And for those of you out here that watched the show yesterday, this adds some context, all right? So We'd heard that there was some meetings Saturday that started at 9 a.m. They went through 7:30 p.m. Then I got a few messages around 7:30, 7:40, like it's a done deal. We're just waiting to figure out who the interim guy is going to be, which is precisely why I had the episode I did yesterday. Because
you got killed for, by the way.
I did get massacred for, which is actually ironic, right? Because, 3 years ago when I started this thing, one of my first videos in the first 2 months was about how I thought Mike Gundy screwed the pooch in 2022, and he was away from the facilities too much, and he was off buying companies and having meetings and letting other people run the day-to-day operations. And I got crucified for that, right? Because I was considered a Gundy hater, and I suggested then he should be on a one-year contract, a year-to-year contract. I always thought the revolving 5-year thing was absolute insanity, right? I don't think any school should ever give somebody the keys to the kingdom quite that much, because I do think that it equaled this. And I discussed that a little bit yesterday. From 2022 until now, Mike Gundy did think that he had this thing calculated. Mike Gundy did think that he could step away and allow other people to run things. He thought this was a well-oiled machine. And you know what, Paul? It probably flipping was until the NIL and transfer portal era. And Mike Gundy, admittedly, he was behind the 8 ball on the transfers. He was the 8 ball on the NIL. He's been behind the 8 ball on the donors' perspective, right? There is conversations lingering that some donors just are refusing to give big money right now because Mike Gundy's the head man, right? So the Board of Regents is maybe an obstacle. We're going to save some of that for segment 3. But before we get to that, man, do you think that at the end of the day, this was just ripping a Band-Aid off of a bullet hole? Because the downside to this is now you open the doors for everybody on the roster to leave the program, right? They're going to get this 30-day transfer window. And there was some speculation that that was going to make things potentially difficult for Oklahoma State. Why do you think they did this now, right? Because essentially, if you waited like 5-6 more weeks, you could retain the roster and have some semblance of a season. Why do you look at the timing of this as a necessity here?
Well, I think, it depends on what kind of person you are, but I think at the end of the day, you have to look at it like this. What's best for both players and coach? It's not one-sided, and also fans, I guess, too. Yeah. But, if I'm in the 80 chair, I'm probably going to be looking at players and coaches first and then fans. And I think what's best for players and coach is probably now. You don't want to have them pigeonholed in like, look what Auburn just did with their coaching situation. Just a bad look for them, right? I mean, I'm not here to speak on whether or not Bruce Pearl's son is going to be a good coach or not.
Roger.
But I think that waiting until there was no other choice to fire him there's bad optics, right? Don't do that at Oklahoma State. Go ahead and just get it done. Pull the Band-Aid off. It's going to be a bullet hole, just like West Virginia is going through 81 new players. Not easy to fix. It's not fixable fast unless you get the right players in immediately, or like a guy like, look at, what happened at Indiana, or some kind of what happened at TCU. Even Rich Rod brought people in from Jack State.
Yeah.
If you can find a coach like that, perhaps that brings in a bunch of guys. But as far as the timing of it, I think it's best for Coach Gundy because he can figure out what he wants to do next. It's best for the players because they can figure out whether they want to be a Cowboy or not going forward, which I think there's a lot of speculation about, right? Based on things that have been said on the sideline, things have been said in the locker room, people talking about buying jewelry, different things like that, right? So look at it from the perspective of this could be a positive thing, because whenever we got rid of Dana going into Neil, there were a ton of cancers in the locker room.
Yeah.
Just
right.
needed to go.
And I talked about A&M going through the same exact transition too. Yes.
Yeah. So you're going to get those guys that aren't program guys out of the locker room, and you're never going to have 100% of program guys, right. Very rarely. But the culture can be strong enough to the point, and we throw the culture word out there a lot. I get it. But, it is a thing and it is true. So, you want to have that established to the point of obviously where guys are going to be able to adhere, even if they're a little bit off from that. And like you say, Gundy, you said he was acting more of that CEO role. Maybe his pulse on the culture of the locker room wasn't as strong as it once was. just
Well, and
speculation from the outside looking
I've
in.
been one of the parties that's been accusatory in that department over the last couple seasons.
Right.
It's just having a disconnection from the locker room. We're about to cover a couple things, have another guest come on board, but real quick, I do want to kind of touch on something that you hit. I talked about yesterday that I did think the timing of this wasn't great to do it this early, but now that it is done, I think it's fair for us to look at the prospects of some of the dudes that could potentially come in. The one thing I do like about this timing wise is if you wait too long, right, you might not be able to get an Alex Golesh because the Florida job might pop open. Yeah. I think Arkansas is not very happy with Pittman. Therefore, they're probably going to be in the search soon. Then you have John Summerall, which I think is a great coach at Tulane, but he's a Kentucky dude, and they're not exactly happy with Mark Stoops. So I do think that there's an element of if you wait too long, you could put yourself in a position where you're having difficulty fulfilling that void. So from that perspective, I do get it, right? I do kind of agree. Again, my issue is if you know there's going to be a mass exodus, some of that could be beneficial because clearly there's some cancerous individuals in the locker room. My only fear here now is that if this portal window opens and if some of these people enter it, that it's not necessarily going to be the cancerous people. It might be some of the dudes who are ready to run their face through brick walls for Oklahoma State, for the orange and black. That is my biggest fear. But at the same point in time, if there's a call to arms for those dudes, it needs to be now. There could be a galvanization moment with an interim staff. It does happen occasionally, yeah? And maybe that's a necessity. Regardless of who the interim guy is going to be, maybe this is an opportunity for them to say in the locker room, all right, guys, we've got to cut the shit, right? If we're getting to the point that we're firing a legend that's about to have a statue outside of the stadium, then that means that shit has hit the fan, right? We're at that effort moment. So check your egos out the door. Stop worrying about what your NIL is. Stop worrying about reassessments or the trucks or the bling bling. None of that crap. You need to send a message, right? If you're a coach on this staff, you're likely going to be looking for a new job when the season's over. So go put something on display. If you're one of the players that's likely to enter the transfer portal, this is an opportunity for you to go to put something on film on display.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I don't know how you could come to the conclusion that there's more pressure on Dan Lanning to win this game. The narrative surrounding Penn State, the opportunity for Penn State with what they have coming back, the Jim Knowles hire from last year. You add on top of that the fact that Dan Lanning beat Ohio State last year because he didn't have the same question or stigma. Every now and then I'd see the comment get thrown out there from some folks, Lanning hasn't won the big, can he win the big game? Well, then he beat Ohio State, then he beat Penn State in the Big Ten championship game. That narrative went away very quickly. James Franklin can dump that narrative of he's never going to do more than just go 10-2 and lose to the big teams and lose the big games. That's what he's going to do. If he's an underdog, he's losing. And if he's a favorite, he's winning. He is a slight favorite in this game. But Seiko, I think there is a lot more pressure on James Franklin in this game than there is for Dan Lanning. Not that Lanning couldn't take criticism if he loses, but it's way more in Franklin's corner.
Yeah, Penn State has more to lose in this game against Oregon. Because of all the things that you mentioned, I mean, and then some, right? Dan Lanning hasn't been he's not pushing 15 years with one program. He's still a relatively new head coach. James Franklin has had, he's at Vanderbilt. He's been at Penn State for a decade plus, again, pushing 15 years. And there isn't a game that you can point to and say that's his signature victory other than Ohio State 2016. I mean, okay, yeah, there's some other good games across the board, right? There's bowl wins, okay? They've won 11 games in a season. They made it to the semifinal. But when we talk about signature victories, where you say Dan Lanning, Ohio State last season, even though they got absolutely blitzed in the Rose Bowl part 2. Okay. But they still
Thanks for reminding us of that. We appreciate it.
Might as well help out because you're reminding me that James Franklin is what? 1-20 against top 10 teams, etc. The record's bad. And so Penn State has more to lose, but they also have so much more to gain. Because I think of this from an even larger picture for the storylines. It's not just about, proving that you are now in tier A as opposed to tier B. I think of the recruiting aspect of it because Oregon recruits nationally. They've gone into this DC, Maryland, Virginia area where Penn State has routinely done well. And now Oregon's starting to take recruits from an area that's been so good to Penn State. I just think of all those other things. If Oregon comes into town and defeats Penn State, it puts more pressure on the Ohio State game, potentially Indiana down the road as well with what we saw against Illinois. It just sets Penn State so many steps backwards, whereas with Oregon, it's like, okay, you are the underdog. You are kind of expected to lose here in some sort of sense, at least according to the books. And then Penn State was also projected to be that true national title contender. Not that Oregon wasn't, but Penn State was the number 2 team right out of the gate this season. National title aspirations. This is the year that James Franklin is supposed to do it. That same ideal wasn't given to Oregon this time around.
Yeah, and for Oregon in this game, it's not that there isn't plenty on the line. I discussed this yesterday on my show that, the path to the playoff, I think looks more difficult with a loss here now than it did before the season because of how good Indiana has looked. That's Oregon's next opponent, by the way. They've got a bye. Yeah, they've got a bye week, but then Indiana looked really good, and I thought Washington would be good. We'll see what they do against Ohio State this weekend. I thought USC would be good. They look a little better even than I thought so far. We'll see if they beat Illinois this weekend. But the path for Oregon and Penn State both is you go 10-2 in the Big Ten, you're going to get in, especially if you're a preseason top 10 team, like it or not. That ingrained sense of bias from the AP voters in the committee, it matters. And so Oregon has that working in their advantage. So does Penn State. I think 10-2 gets either of these teams in, but you lose this game and suddenly you're on significantly thinner ice than you were going into it. Whereas if you win, you don't just have a really high quality win, but you have, more margin for error going forward. And so, it's not that there isn't pressure on Oregon to win the game at some level. It's just that on paper, they shouldn't be expected to win the game. I know plenty of Oregon fans are very confident in that regard, but to your point, there's way more for Penn State to lose than Oregon because Oregon has a ton to gain in this matchup, especially for me personally and how I look at this team, which has always been, this should be a playoff team. There's way too much talent there. But if you win this game, you are right back up to starting to let those thoughts creep in of, is this the year? Is this the season that it'll finally break through? Because if Oregon can win this game in this spot with Penn State at home off a bye, who can't they beat in all of college football? Not that there aren't other good teams out there. Georgia looks really good. We know Ohio State is good. There are a lot of good teams, but if Oregon can win this game, I think you show that you've gotten back to that level that you were at last season where it was going into the playoff, national championship or bust. The expectations in my eyes shift dramatically for Oregon in this game if they go on the road and get a win.
Well, and again, it goes back to kind of the preseason chatter around both these teams. Penn State was viewed as a true national title contender. So was Clemson, right?
Yeah.
But that conversation's a lot different now. And I'm not trying to imply that Penn State is pending Clemson. But I'm saying that you had your tier 1 teams going into the season. Oregon was a tier 2 team, and it just kind of echoes the point on both of our sides. Leverage. You have leverage. This is a consequential game one way or another. You now don't have to worry maybe isn't the right word, but you just have a little bit of wiggle room. You have a little less pressure on your plate going forward throughout the season, because 9-3, you're all but definitely out. And it's again, if you're a national title team, you shouldn't be relying on mulligans, but if Penn State gets the injury bug, Oregon gets the injury bug, right? And you get into a situation where, a game's now tougher than you perceived it to be early on. You just don't know. But a game like this, it gives you your signature win for either coach, Franklin or Lanning. It gives you leverage for the rest of the season. And I think of the recruiting aspect as well, with how many elite recruits that are being nationally recruited get to see this one up close and personal. That's going to have an impact. And again, recruiting's all about the future. So this game has an impact 2 to 3 years down the road, which could, really help a team or set them back a couple steps and make their job harder.
Speaking of recruiting in that general area, thanks for Brandon Finney. We like that guy. Whew.
Instant starter. That's why Penn State was right there until Oregon swooped right in.
Yep, Michigan was in the fold as well. That's one of the battles. And at some level, it does feel strange to talk about the recruiting impact, but I think you're right to bring it up because
Vinny, Iheanacho, I think of those.
Yeah, Iheanacho, I think is how it's pronounced. At least that's what I've come to understand. But Finney is the guy that came to my mind immediately when you brought that up, because he is literally one of Oregon's starting corners. I think he's Oregon's best corner at this point in time, which is saying something, because the secondary has played really well. The pass defense for Oregon has been really, really good.